Chicago, October 1926. In an era when gang rivalries shaped the city's streets, Hymie Weiss walks out of his lawyer's office. He is one of the most dangerous men in the city. He has survived 2 previous attempts on his life. He has gone to war with Al Capone and lived to keep fighting. He is carrying a black rosary in one hand and a cigarette in the other, and he has no idea that the men waiting for him across the street have been in position since dawn. They open fire. What happened in the next 3 seconds, and what the police found in his coat pocket afterward, told a story that nobody in Chicago was supposed to know about. A story that changed the entire balance of power in this city, and the man it was written to never even received it.
003, Chicago, October 1926. In an era when gang rivalries shaped the city's streets, Hymie Weiss walks out of his lawyer's office. He is one of the most dangerous men in the city. He has survived 2 previous attempts on his life. He has gone to war with Al Capone and lived to keep fighting. He is carrying a black rosary in one hand and a cigarette in the other, and he has no idea that the men waiting for him across the street have been in position since dawn. They open fire. What happened in the next 3 seconds, and what the police found in his coat pocket afterward, told a story that nobody in Chicago was supposed to know about. A story that changed the entire balance of power in this city, and the man it was written to never even received it. 11 Labs, voiceover. October 11th, 1926. State Street, Chicago. Early afternoon. The light is thin and flat, the kind that comes off Lake Michigan in autumn, when the sky can't decide between gray and white and settles somewhere in between. The sidewalk outside Holy Name Cathedral is wet from a morning rain. A few pigeons work the gutter near the corner. A fruit seller 2 doors down is stacking apples into a wooden crate, the smell of them sharp and sweet in the cold air. This is one of the quietest blocks in the near North Side. In a few minutes, it will be the loudest. Hymie Weiss comes through the door of his lawyer's building at 740 North State at 1:42 in the afternoon. He is 30 years old and looks older, the kind of face that carries everything it has been through. 2 years of running the North Side gang after the assassination of Dean O'Banion. 2 years of fighting a war against the most powerful crime operation in Chicago. 2 years of surviving things that should have killed him. He survived the first attempt on his life in January. He survived the second in August. He is not the kind of man who changes his routes. In his right hand, a lit cigarette. In his left, a black rosary, the same one he carries every day, Catholic habit and gangster ritual wrapped together in a string of dark beads. He steps onto the pavement, says something to the man beside him, and starts across the street toward his parked car. He does not make it to the car. Across the street and 1 floor up, room 302 of the building at 740 North State has been occupied since early that morning. 2 men, a pair of Thompson submachine guns and a shotgun, resting across the sill of the window that faces the street, partly concealed by a curtain drawn to within an inch of the glass. The room had been rented 3 weeks earlier under a name that did not exist, paid in cash, with a story about being in town for business that the landlady accepted without question because the man who gave it was polite and the money was exact. She had not asked what the business was. For 3 weeks, the room had been empty most of the time. The men used it only when they needed to, checking the sight lines, timing the walk from the courthouse door to the car, learning which direction Weiss faced when he came down the steps. They had been patient in the particular way that men are patient when they have been paid to be. They were waiting for Hymie Weiss. The arrangement was Capone's. The planning was careful enough that Weiss, a man who had survived this city long enough to develop good instincts about rooms and windows and the specific feeling of being watched, walked out of his lawyer's office without looking up. He did not check the building across the street. He did not break his stride. He walked across State Street the way a man walks across a street he has crossed 100 times, which is to say, without thinking about it at all. That habit cost him everything. Quick question. Where in the world are you watching this right now? Drop your country in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches. The first burst from room 302 hits the sidewalk at 1:43 p.m. Glass from a storefront window falls in a sheet. The pigeons scatter. The fruit seller drops his crate. Apples roll across the wet pavement and into the gutter. Weiss is hit. The guns do not stop. The burst is sustained, continuous. The Thompson working through its drum magazine with the mechanical indifference of something designed to do exactly this. The men beside Weiss are diving, running, dropping to the ground. One of them is already down before he hits the pavement. Weiss is still standing. He has turned slightly, away from the building, the way a man turns when something is wrong, but his body hasn't yet processed what. The cigarette is still in his right hand. The black rosary is still in his left. His grip on both of them does not loosen. 3 seconds. That is how long Hymie Weiss remains upright after the first shot. 3 seconds, and he does not fall. Later, the men who saw it from the street would struggle to explain what they witnessed, not because it was impossible, but because it did not look like anything they had a word for. A man standing there in the middle of State Street with a cigarette and a rosary, the smoke still rising from the cigarette, as if some part of him had not yet received the message. Then he fell. He died before the ambulance arrived. The police sealed the block within 20 minutes. 3 squad cars, then 5, then a coroner's wagon blocking the far end of the street. Reporters arrived before the coroner's wagon did. A photographer from the Tribune got 2 frames off before an officer put a hand over his lens and told him to step back. They found the room in the building across the street within the hour, the curtain still half drawn. 2 spent Thompson drums on the floor beside the window, cigarette butts from several days of waiting, an empty coffee cup, still faintly warm. The men were gone. They had left through the back of the building while the sirens were still 3 blocks away. No one had seen them leave. No one had seen them arrive. The landlady gave a description that matched half the men in Cook County. The detective assigned to the case spent 11 months on it. He found nothing. They searched Weiss's body at the scene. In his coat pocket, they found a note. The note had been damaged, but the words were still legible. 3 sentences, in a hand that was not particularly careful or particularly educated. The kind of handwriting that belongs to a man who did not write often and did not pretend otherwise. Al, make peace with me, or we both die. No last name, no date, no other markings. The note was addressed to Al Capone. It had never reached him. Weiss had been carrying it to a meeting, to a go-between, to someone who might get it to the right hands, and he had run out of time before he could deliver it. The man he was trying to reach had found him first. The detective who processed the note photographed it, bagged it, and logged it into the Cook County evidence system on the afternoon of October 11th, 1926. That seemed like the end of the story. It was not. Capone was in Cicero when the call came. He listened, asked 3 questions. How many men? How fast? Did anyone see the exit? When he had the answers, he said nothing for a moment. A man who was in the room described it later as the silence of a man checking a list and finding everything in order. Then Capone thanked the caller, set the receiver down, and sat back in his chair. He did not smile, did not celebrate, did not mark the moment in any way that the men around him could point to afterward and say, that was when he knew it was done. He simply nodded once, the nod of a man whose expectations have been met, and went back to what he had been doing before the phone rang. That evening, Capone hosted a dinner. He did not mention Weiss. Nobody at the table mentioned Weiss. The dinner lasted 2 hours, and the conversation covered horse racing and a property deal on the west side, and the Cubs' dismal season. And the name Hymie Weiss did not come up once. Whether this was respect or indifference, or simply the discipline of a man who understood that gloating was its own kind of vulnerability, no one who was there ever said. In the Chicago underworld that night, in every bar and back room, and rented apartment were the kind of men who knew what had happened gathered to talk about it. The tone was not triumphant. It was something more like quiet, the particular quiet that falls when something has been decided and cannot be undecided. Weiss was gone. Capone had no more serious rivals on the North Side. The war that had been bleeding both sides for 2 years was over. That seemed like the end. The North Side was absorbed. The city was reorganized. Order, in the specific and violent meaning that word carried in Chicago in 1926, was restored. But 3 things remained. 12 years later, 1938, a junior detective named Kowalski, working on an unrelated property dispute in the Cook County Records Archive, pulls a box from a shelf marked 1926, North Side Cases. He is looking for a deed transfer. He finds instead a row of evidence bags, yellowed plastic around yellowed paper, the labels written in a hand he does not recognize. One bag is labeled Note/Weiss, Hymie /October 11th, 1926. He opens the bag, reads the note, sets it back down. He files his report on the property dispute. He does not mention the note to anyone. What would he say? It is evidence in a case that was never prosecuted, against a man who was himself dead by 1947 in a house in Florida. His mind already gone from syphilis, his empire already divided among men who didn't remember owing him anything. Kowalski replaces the bag on the shelf and leaves. 1961. A researcher from the Chicago History Museum conducts an audit of the Cook County Evidence Archive for materials related to the Prohibition era. The box marked 1926, North Side Cases, is on the list. When she opens it, the bag labeled Note/Weiss, Hymie /October 11th, 1926 is not there. She checks the log. The note was signed in on October 11th, 1926. It was never signed out. She marks it in her audit as missing. She moves to the next box. Somewhere between 1938 and 1961, the note vanished. So did the rosary, logged separately, on the same day, in the same box. Both gone. No record of transfer, no record of destruction, no record of any kind explaining where they went or who took them. No artifact, no evidence, no surviving record. No monument was ever placed on the corner of State Street and Superior. No plaque on the building where room 302 looked down on the street. The building itself was demolished in 1972 to make way for a parking structure. The parking structure was replaced by a glass-fronted office building in 1994. None of the people who work in that building now know what happened at that corner on a gray October afternoon in 1926. The black rosary was never found. The note was never found. What remained was not a grave, not a museum display, not a footnote that anyone reads. What remained was a story, told in back rooms and bars for decades after the people who were there were gone, passed from one generation of Chicago's underworld to the next, not as fact, but as a kind of weather report, a reminder of what this city was, and who had run it, and what it cost to stand across from Al Capone and not back down. Hymie Weiss stood across from him for 2 years. He was standing, in the most literal sense, at the very end. 3 seconds, a cigarette and a black rosary, and a note that never arrived. That is all that is left of the man who came closest to taking Capone down. No conviction, no justice, no record that survived. Just the corner of State Street, on a gray October afternoon, the sound of a Thompson submachine gun, and the particular silence that follows a war when only one side is left to tell the story. If this story stayed with you, drop a comment below. Tell me what you think. Some moments in history show us what happens when power operates without limits. October 11th, 1926 was one of them.